Dynasties and Dystopias by Neon Sangetsu, Chapter 4. Power. It's power. Alright, I'm a reasonable fellow. Go on, I'll give you a free shot. But I'm warning you, if you waste it, you're gonna regret it. Just a man. Power. It's power. Vander noticed their plunder eventually. Of course, the old man did. Frankly, Vi found it a miracle he hadn't seen it before. It wasn't as if they were particularly subtle with their new gear. Perhaps he did notice and didn't put two and two together at first. Maybe he was waiting for one of them to come forward and explain themselves. It should have been her. Nevertheless, a full 3 days later, he finally got it on to their little stunt. She knew it at the moment he gathered them together in the den and locked the door behind him. There was a keen gleam in his eyes as he sat them down, a sharp spark when his eyes roved over them. Milo and Clagger flinched where they lay sprawled out against the attached sofa. Powder proved too quick to duck out her head behind a pillar as she sank into a chair. Violet didn't much blame her sister. She wanted to sink down into the ragged cushions herself and never emerged. All right, their father began slowly. I've got one question for you lot, and I want you to answer truthfully. The children winced as one mind, one body. I'm not angry, he temporized with a raised hand. I just want the truth. This time his gaze dragged across them, noting Powder's pistol and her necklace and Clagger's shield and my little shiny new cloak. The latter whistled innocently and looked away. Then it was her turn. Vi hid her arms, or rather the gauntlet bracelets sheathing them, behind her back, feeling every bit not naughty child and suddenly afraid he'd take them from her. These were a gift. They were meant to be hers. She'd not give them up for anything. All right, spill it. His gaze drooled into her. Where'd you find all this? I want names, and I want them now. Vi pursed her lips. Deny, deny, deny. Anything she said could and would be used against her. Milo. When she didn't crack, his gaze pivoted to her foster brothers. Clagger, what do you have to say for yourselves? The boys shook their heads to and fro, and of course, who did that leave to look at? We didn't steal it. Potter cracked immediately under his gaze. He gave it to us. Banner brought out his pipe and lit it. A dark brow rose. Gave it to you? Violet ran on her with an angry hiss. Powder! Milo groaned. Told you, she's a jinx. It was some guy. He knew your name. By now, her sister knew the only way out was through. He was real friendly, let us leave and everything. Vander took a long draught and exhaled a long plume of smoke. This bloke you met, what did he look like? Powder spilled the beans. Vi palmed her face. No point in holding back now. They were well past the point of no return. If someone was going to spill the beans, it might as well have been her, and so she sat idly by as her kid sister wove the tale. Fantastic bits aside, it sounded almost believable. Harmlessly, really. So why did Vander look like he'd just seen someone rise from the dead? Nato's a nice guy, Powder finished to preening. He's not who you think he is. Clagger wagged an eyebrow at her. Someone's got a crush. Ew, gross. She slapped his arm. Not like that. Him? Vander recoiled as if he'd been struck. He isn't. No, never mind. Keep the key here if you like, but you need to stay away from him. He's dangerous. Her lips twitched, pursed into a frown. Naruto, dangerous. Once she might have thought the same, but time and personal experience had a way of skewing her thoughts. Now that she'd been away from him long enough to realize he wouldn't be coming after them, so too did she have time to think. Naruto wasn't dangerous, not to them, not at all, so long as they didn't provoke him. She recalled that worn smile. Run along now. He could have slaughtered them a dozen times over, but he hadn't. He'd exercised restraint. He had the look of a weary old man, despite his age, like his soul had been stretched too far, too fast. Stay away from him. Nah, not happening. Besides, she needed more ammo for her babies. Vi blinked. Violet blinked hard. Oh God, she was treating Ember Silica like it was her child. Some of her defiance must have shown through, because Vander heaved a sigh. Everyone out! Powder scampered. Milo and Clagger weren't far behind. Vander sat before her. Those kids look up to you. Vi sighed and cradled her gauntlet close to her chest. Yeah, I know. No, you don't. Her mentor sighed. When people look up to you, you don't get to be selfish. You say run, they run. A worn finger flicked her forehead when she tried to protest. You say swim, they dive in. You say light a fire, they show up with oil. But whatever happens, it's on you. Vi crossed both arms before her chest and settled in for a long wait. That's not fair. Life ain't fair, kiddo. I used to be just like you. He seemed to sink into himself for a moment, reliving a painful memory. A punch-drunk dolt who thought he could take on the world with nothing more than a bit of grit and his fists. I shouted and screamed with the best of them, raged with the worst of them. But you're a leader. I never was. Those kids look up to you. Take care of them. Be a good leader. Her face flamed. Huh, you can be such a dad sometimes. Surely wherever Whiskers was, he wasn't dealing with this. No good deed went unpunished, it seemed. In hindsight, perhaps it had been too much to hope Jace's so-called hextech wouldn't attract attention. It did, of course. Naruto had always known it might, expected it, even prepared for it in his own roundabout way, but it still rankled him all the same. He'd much rather be finding a way home rather than playing host to whatever the hell this was. Bah, his clones were probably off having all kinds of fun, but no, he had to be here. Couldn't trust this to one of the boys for fear of them getting dispelled. There was a secret he very much wanted to keep under wraps for the time being, or worse, getting bored and blundering off like a loon. So, in short, suffering it was. Blue eyes roved over the dignitaries and council members before him, not a brain among them. Jace wanted to take it to the council to show his findings before all. He understood that, really, he did, and he had. With proper funding, his research would expand tenfold, expediting the chance of him getting home. But did they have to attend this blasted party? His sole comfort was the fact that Jace and Ari looked just as miserable as he felt. The former was undoubtedly the star of the show and known to the council as such, but Ari was new, exotic. She clung to his arms for dear life, stealing furtive glances about. Others glared back with far less reservation in their eyes, some with anger, others lust. He didn't like the look of either. A bunch of posh peacocks, the lot of them. Victor seemed nice at least. He had some interesting ideas at that. The things we can achieve, the things we can do to achieve our goals. He'd drawn more than a few looks for his rough attire, though he suspected it was more the scythe on his back that drew their eyes. Rast was many things, but subtle he was not. Even now, his old friend executed a subtle aura of menace, promising pain to whoever stayed over long. Let me kill them. Just a little death. That's all I ask. Kurma huffed. Tempting. That angry, are you? If one more mortal calls me an ornament, I will burn this world. Nato felt the ghost of a smile flip across his lips. For a moment he indulged in it, the simple act of letting his weapon loose to wreak havoc. But no, he needed these people. Well, their resources at least, for now. Maybe he'd let them rust. No, bad rust. Can I at least kill the idiotic one? Which one? The trio shared a laugh. What about the fat tough fop of a fool with the puzzle box? Blah, too many calories. Ali stirred in his peripherals. No, it might be better to say that she'd been shadowing him for the better part of the evening. Isn't it remarkable how just a little greed can tip the scales? He had an inkling of what was bothering her, of what had been bothering her since they'd met. Poor thing couldn't hold herself back anymore. Go ahead, he muttered aside. I'll be fine. Her tails twitched. Surely. Did I stutter? Evidently, she couldn't take it anymore because she pounced on him. She felt his life force ebb for a moment as she fastened her lips to his neck, kissing him softly. To the others, it seemed merely an intimate display. For him, not so. No doubt she expected death and despair from him, extinction as she fed on his soul like she had so many others. Instead, she received laughter. Hey, that tickles. Her eyes widened. How are you? Aha! There he is! A familiar voice called, causing her to recall. The man of the hour! Naruto exhaled in a long, suffering sigh. Jace had returned, and with reinforcements at that, he turned and found a dark-skinned woman accompanying his partner. Not on his arm, she didn't seem the sort to shackle herself to anyone. Dark eyes fixed firmly on him, sizing him up. He did the same in turn, uncaring for subtlety nor subterfuge. In the end, he found her, not wanting per se, but intriguing. Might I present my associate Naruto? He gestured. If it weren't for him, I never would have gotten our hex stick off the ground. Naruto, this is Mel. Much to Jason's chagrin, he merely grunted. Hello. Mel quirked a brow at the blonde. Not terribly talkative, is he? Harsh blue eyes cut to her. He is when he meets someone worth talking to. For the first time since he'd met her, Mel stopped smiling. Ari stifled a giggle behind her palm, but behind them Victor whistled even as Jace winced. Naruto remained immune to it all. Screw this, he should have sent a clone. I can hear you, Vice had poked into the workshop. Oi, old man, I need more ammo. Naruto's clone looked up from his workbench. How quickly she changes her tune. Previews. Silco counted to three, then he gave the signal. For Son! There it is. Right on cue, let him up. Sometimes I think you and my mother would get along. Thanks. It wasn't a compliment. Her fingers danced across his arm. Surely I can change your mind. Artie growled. Why are you here? Vi brindled. Right back at you. Girls. Naruto snatched them both up by the scruff of their hairs, of their necks. Behave. End of chapter 4. Dynasties and Dystopias by Neon Zangetsu. Chapter 5. Reload. There is nothing in this world so dangerous as a man with nothing to lose, so go ahead, push him, flip that switch, press that button, see what happens. Just a man. Reload. Is that enough ammo for you? Vi did not squeal. No, nay, never. She was better than that. She was a daughter of Zon, a determined and strong, a proud girl who could brawl with the best of them. It wasn't as if she'd been waiting the last 3 hours to hear those words. Nope, no sirree, definitely not me. Added a bit of an upgrade too. Naruto's clone handed her both the golden bracelet of Ember Silicum. Might pack a bit more of a punch now. Eee! She all but ripped the gauntlets from his arms and donned them. Show me, show me, show me! Naruto's brow shot into his hair. Well, that's not a sound I ever thought you would make. Hit her cheeks. Oh God, she said that out loud. What's it to you, old man? Nothing, really. Naruto only chortled. It's such a fierce little thing, always ready to punch someone. Leaning back in his chair, he placed his chin up upon a hand. You remind me of someone I used to know. She had pink hair too. Although you're actually likable. Vi blinked. What was her name? No one important. He waved a hand. She's probably long dead by now. In any case, feel the trigger under your thumbs. She held up the leftmost gauntlet of Ember Silica and shook it a little. Yeah, trigger sticking a little. It's meant to. Here, hit this. Reaching across the table, he pulled another one of his relics out, what looked like a slab of metal, and fashioned it to his wrist. On closer inspection, she realized it wasn't one at all, but an actual shield, with little on the small side though bearing a single large emerald jewel in its center. What kind of shield is that? It's tiny. This, the Shadow Clone hummed, this is not just the shield, this is the shield. Her brow furrowed a little. He'd phrased it strangely just now. What had he meant by that? Another man fell into this world of yours once upon a time. Yes, once upon a time. He shooted himself behind a bench, letting the odd jeweled shield shimmer in the light. I found him, nursed him back to health, then sent him on his way home. During that time, he let me study his weapon. When she made to interrupt, he held up a hand. What you see here is a poor man's replica, but it'll suffice for this. Her interest peaked. What was his name? Naruto smiled and tousled his hair. Not for me. Ring a bell? Vi crossed her arms and tilted her head. No. What what's the pose for? He laughed. You're trying to seduce me? A bit young for that. It redoubled as fire flared in her eyes. Come back in a few years and try again. She stuck her tongue out at his way. Blah. All right, all right. He warded off her fist with one hand. Here's the deal. I want you to hit me, or rather, this shield, as hard as you can. Should help you figure out the new figure I installed. There's a bonus in it for you if you actually manage to tag me with those gauntlets of yours. Hesitation reared its head in her heart. She squashed it. Fine, just you watch. I'll knock your block off. Now hold on. Next clone tittered, taking her pride in stride. You might have misheard me. Not half as hard, not some arbitrary percentage. I want you. A finger flicked to her forehead, drawing a dark scowl from her anew. To hit me as hard as you can. And if I don't, he stopped smiling. Then I guess you don't need those gauntlets. Panic took wing, overshadowing her thoughts. Ah! His left arm rose, lazily bringing the shield with it, and quite suddenly it changed. Polished steel shimmered into dark metal. Her fist struck it head on regardless, emitting a hollow clang. She held back, unwilling to put her all into it, and pay dearly. Her entire arm shook, rattled from fist to shoulder. Then came the pain. She jerked back with a hiss, waving her hands. Well, well, merry blue eyes perked out over the rim of his replica relic. Seems I touched a nerve. How? She scowled, grappling with a sudden pang of anger. No way that thing's sturdy. Let me say this one more time. He waved. You, me, as hard as you can. Are we clear? Her eyes flashed. Crystal. A tiny smile touched those dirty whiskered cheeks. That's a girl. Raising her fist, Vi edged forward, seizing him up as a boxer might a dangerous opponent. Nato rose out of his seat fully to tower over her. His smile didn't waver, not once, not for the first time. Vi hesitated. Before that smile lurked a fighter, and no matter how kind he might seem, she knew he could annihilate her. Would too if she pissed him off. Well, he quirked a blond brow. What's wrong? I ain't getting any younger. Vi shifted her stance. Right. Remember your training. Breathe. Focus. We've right. Then there. She dove at him. Punch, jab, uppercut. Wailed on Naruto with everything she had. Yet that shield was always there. Flicked its way between her fists each time. Roundhouse a rabbit punch. Duck when he tried to bash her face in with the shield. A bead of sweat ran down her brow as the metal kissed her cheek, throwing a feint. She got his shield to go left, then struck right, only to fail a second time. And then she saw them. Much to her surprise, she found the rounds as she ejected glued themselves to the sturdy bulwark. More than a few of them were glowing softly. Realization dawned. Her thumb found the trip beneath the gauntlet, got it wrapped around her finger, and made a fist. Heat flared forth as a localized explosion consumed Naruto. He laughed into it and emerged from the blast, hair slightly singed, smile shining through it all. Ta-da! He dusted himself off, grinning from ear to ear. What do you think? Pretty neat, huh? Sorry I had to rile you up to make it try. Vi lowered her arms, mouth agape. Did you just give me a freaking punchable sticky bombs? Yep, he grinned. The door swung open and hit the wall with a harsh crash, cutting her thoughts apart as a hot knife would so much butter. As she turned, the original Naruto walked, staggered really, through the door, looking positively haggard. He took one look at her and paused. His clone snapped, waved, set the shield down on the table, snapped off a snarky salute, then vanished in a plume of white smoke, leaving him to stagger even further as he received its hard-won memories. Bright blue eyes fixed on her. What do we have here? Had a little fun while I was away, did you? Vi did hit her gauntlets behind her back. No. He walked past, tousling her hair. If you're worried about my partner, don't be. I left Jace back at the party. I don't expect he'll thank you for that. A man trotted in after Naruto, moving at a brisk pace despite their cane. The newcomer looked weary, worn in both body and mind alike. Vi had time enough to take in his disheveled brown hair, rumpled clothing, and keen eyes. Then he too was past her, eyes roaming about the apartment with naked delight. Fascinating. His gaze lighted upon a nearby aperture. He limped towards it and picked it up, observing the concentrated rings as one might a puzzle box. This device, it is powered by your chakra, yes, and a hex tech as well. He gave it a flick with his finger, marveling a little as the disc aligned, creating a tiny portal no larger than his palm. Fascinating to have come so far in such a short time. Vi, meet Victor. Naruto waved a hand between them. Victor, Vi, you'll be seeing a lot of each other in the future. Great. One of those sciencey types. She tried to smile and managed a half-hearted wave. The man with the cane smiled softly. A pleasure. Now that just leaves. Ah, there she is. Last but not least, a young girl with pale silver hair, actual foxtail swaying behind her back, trailed after them, looking somewhat out of sorts herself, or she was until she noticed her presence. Fair to face and dark of hair, the newcomer had a wild, exotic look to her. Indeed, those unnatural bright eyes locked onto hers with the intensity of a predator. Dark, furry ears flicked atop her head, drooping now as she realized just who she was and why she was here. Her response was markedly less pleasant. An intruder! Out Appa growled the words. Why are you here? Vibrant with pride roused by the insult. Right back at you! I got here first! Girls! Naruto snatched them both up by the scruff of their necks. Behave! No dice! They flailed at each other to no avail, arms flying, legs kicking, hissing and spitting. She started it! Oh yeah, I'll end it, come here! Naruto blew out a frustrated sigh. This is my life now. Victor laughed and clasped his shoulder. Come, we have work to do. Vi scowled as she found herself lowered to the floor. Well, if that two bit, whoever she was, thought she could still knock her away, her brought forward fiercely. Ari glared right back. It was war. Previews. Madness. No, no, near, no, 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 there's purpose. I believe you when you say you were careless. Many messages can be taken from that, intended or not. What I do know is an act of conviction. Marcus cried out, "This wasn't the deal. Deals changed. Powder, stay put. I mean it, but I want to help." Silko quirked about. Well played. Hey, I keep my promises. Now do you have what I need? He considered the apertures, the design he'd labored upon for so long. This'll get me home. It has to. If it didn't, he'd do mad. Naruto raised his hands. Sure, I surrender. Smart man. Now come this way and no funny business. Vi balked. No, what you doing? They'll kill you. Crunch. Blood splattered her face. It didn't belong to her. A firm arm swept her up and away to safety as her would-be captor pitched back, clutching a hole in their stomach. I did surrender. Naruto pulled his bloody hand away with a low hum, smiling nothing short of sly as he regarded the rest of them. I surrender any remaining goodwill I had towards you lot. He ripped the scythe from his back. Time to feed my friend. He's been so hungry the last few days. Then he was among them. End of chapter 5.